Dark Night of the Soul. By St. John the Cross. Book 1, Chapter 2. Some of the Imperfections of Pride, Possessed by Beginners. 1. These beginners feel so fervent and diligent in their spiritual exercises and undertakings, that a certain kind of secret pride is generated in them, that begets a complacency with themselves and their accomplishments, even though holy works do of their very nature cause humility. Then, they develop a somewhat vain at times, very vain desire to speak of spiritual things, in others' presence, and sometimes even to instruct, rather than be instructed. In their hearts, they condemn others, who do not seem to have the kind of devotion they would like them to have, and sometimes they give expression to this criticism, like the Pharisee who despised the publican, while he boasted and praised God for the good deeds he himself accomplished. 2. The devil, desiring the growth of pride and presumption in these beginners, often increases their fervor and readiness to perform such works, and other ones too. For he is quite aware that all these works and virtues are not only worthless for them, but even become vices. Some of these persons become so evil-minded that they do not want anyone except themselves to appear holy, and so by both word and deed they condemn and detract others, whenever the occasion arises, seeing a little splinter in their brother's eye, and failing to consider the wooden beam in their own eye. Matthew 7 verse 3. They strain at the other's gnat and swallow their own camel. Matthew 23:24. 3. And when at times their spiritual directors, their confessors, or their superiors disapprove their spirit and method of procedure, they feel that these directors do not understand, or perhaps, that this failure to approve, derives from a lack of holiness, since they want these directors to regard their conduct with esteem and praise. So they quickly search for some other spiritual advisor, more to their liking, someone who will congratulate them and be impressed by their deeds, and they flee as they would death, those who attempt to place them on the safe road, by forbidding these things, and sometimes they even become hostile toward such spiritual directors. Frequently, in their presumption, they make many resolutions but accomplish very little. Sometimes they want others to recognize their spirit and devotion, and as a result occasionally contrive to make some manifestations of it, such as movements, sighs, and other ceremonies. Sometimes, with the assistance of the devil, they experience raptures, more often in public than in private, and they are quite pleased, and often eager, for others to take notice of these. 4. Many want to be the favorites of their confessors, and thus they are consumed by 1,000 envies and disquietudes. Embarrassment forbids them from relating their sins clearly, lest their reputation diminish in their confessor's eyes. They confess their sins in the most favorable light, so as to appear better than they actually are, and thus they approach the confessional, to excuse themselves, rather than accuse themselves. Sometimes they confess the evil things they do to a different confessor, so that their own confessor might think they commit no sins at all. Therefore, in their desire to appear holy, they enjoy relating their good behavior to their confessor, and in such careful terms, that these good deeds appear greater than they actually are. It would be more humble of them, as we will point out later, to make light of the good they do and to wish that no one, neither their confessor nor anybody else, should consider it of any importance at all. 5. Sometimes they minimize their faults, and at other times they become discouraged by them, since they felt they were already saints, and they become impatient and angry with themselves, which is yet another fault. They are often extremely anxious that God remove their faults and imperfections, but their motive is personal peace rather than God. They fail to realize that were God to remove their faults, they might very well become more proud and presumptuous. They dislike praising anyone else, but they love to receive praise, and sometimes they even seek it. In this they resemble the foolish virgins who had to seek oil from others, when their own lamps were extinguished. Matthew 25 verse 8. 6. The number of these imperfections is serious in some people and causes them a good deal of harm. Some have fewer, some have more, and yet others have little more than the first movements toward them. But there are scarcely any beginners, who at the time of their initial fervor, do not fall victim to some of these imperfections. But souls who are advancing in perfection at this time, act in an entirely different manner, and with a different quality of spirit. They receive great benefit from their humility, by which they not only place little importance on their deeds, but also take very little self-satisfaction from them. They think everyone else is far better than they are, and usually possess a holy envy of them, and would like to emulate their service of God. Since they are truly humble, their growing fervor and the increased number of their good deeds, and the gratification they receive from them, only cause them to become more aware of their debt to God, and the inadequacy of their service to Him, and thus the more they do, the less satisfaction they derive from it. Their charity and love makes them want to do so much for God, that what they actually do accomplish seems as nothing. This loving solicitude goads them, preoccupies them, and absorbs them to such an extent, that they never notice what others do or do not accomplish, but if they should, they then think, as I say, that everyone is better than they. They think they themselves are insignificant, and want others to think this also, and to belittle and slight their deeds. Moreover, even though others do praise and value their works, these souls are unable to believe them, such praises seem strange to them. 7. These souls humbly and tranquilly long to be taught by anyone who might be a help to them. This desire is the exact opposite of that other desire we mentioned above, of those who want to be themselves the teachers in everything. When these others notice that someone is trying to give them some instruction, they themselves take the words from their very mouths as though they already know everything. Yet these humble souls, far from desiring to be anyone's teacher, are ready to take a road different from the one they are following, if told to do so. For they do not believe they could ever be right themselves. They rejoice when others receive praise, and their only sorrow is that they do not serve God as these others do. Because they consider their deeds insignificant, they do not want to make them known. They are even ashamed to speak of them to their spiritual directors, because they think these deeds are not worth mentioning. They are more eager to speak of their faults and sins, and reveal these to others, than of their virtues. They have an inclination to seek direction from one who will have less esteem for their spirit and deeds. Such is the characteristic of a pure and simple and true spirit, one very pleasing to God. Since the wise Spirit of God dwells within these humble souls, He moves them to keep these treasures hidden, and to manifest only their faults. God gives this grace to the humble, together with the other virtues, just as He denies it to the proud. 8. These souls would give their life's blood to anyone who serves God, and they will do whatever they can, to help others serve Him. When they see themselves fall into imperfections, they suffer this with humility, with docility of spirit, and with loving fear of God and hope in Him. Yet I believe very few souls are so perfect in the beginning. We would be happy enough, if they managed not to fall into these imperfections of pride. As we will point out later, then, God places these souls in the dark night, so as to purify them of these imperfections, and make them advance. Chapter 3. Next video. Thanks.